friends, today's NRI Samay program from Los Angeles brought to you commercial free by listeners like you. Your generous donations make possible for us to stay commercial free. This is a live show and our guest will be happy to answer any of your questions. If you have a question for the guest, please leave a message on the chat window on nrisamay.com/live. Thank you for your support.
Friends, welcome back to NRI Samai. This is Srikanth, live from Los Angeles here. And as usual, every week we try to bring in incredible people. And this week is no exception. Today we have Medha Patkar ji. And I suppose she would need no introduction at all. And Medha Patkar ji has spearheaded the Narmada Bachao Andolan that has been part of various social movements for over 30 years in India. Medha Thai was also on NRI Samay last year, and we are blessed again to have her back on NRI Samay. Times have changed in 1 year. Many unbelievable things happened in the country, on a political front as well, and also the socio-political front. The culmination of socio-political activists is definitely happening in the country, and it's very visible. It's a good sign as well. So just recently, Medha Thai announced that National Alliance for People's Movement would also actively support the Aam Aadmi Party. And that created a lot of interest in the circles and also political spectrum of things. So Medha Thai is right now live on NRI Samay. And if you would like to talk to Medha Thai, and if you are in the US, please call on 510-894-NRIS or 510-894-6747. You can also use the Skype ID NRI Samay. So, Didi, welcome back to NRI Samay. Once again, thank you very much for making it today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have interaction with the NRIs and the others who listen to this.
Thank you, Didi. So, let me come to this first question, Didi, right away and not waste any time, and listeners are there right now. So the convener of NAPM, an umbrella forum of around 250 social organizations around the country, did he give us a little background of NAPM into electoral politics? Where did it all start and what were the contributions?
Okay, Shrikant, first of all, let me clarify, because now, just since the recentmost of the NAPM's 9th biennial convention, I have decided to remain as advisor and not one of the conveners, which I remained for all these years. Since 1996, when the National Alliance of People's Movements was formed, we have taken a position that as NAPM, there would be no direct entry into the electoral politics. And so even today, we are not intervening as NAPM, but most of the movements in NAPM and also the movements associated with NAPM, they have decided to vote for Aam Aadmi Party. And beyond that, there are some candidates from the various movements who have filed their applications, and very few as exceptions may contest elections as independent candidates as well. But some of the movements are very categorical about not entering electoral politics, and because we feel that in spite of whether we enter electoral politics or not, the independence and the primacy of people's movements in India and the alliance of people's movements across the wide spectrum of agriculturists, laborers, Dalits, Adivasis, fish workers, right up to middle class, all those who suffer at the hands of the rulers, that should remain. So fighting for equity and justice is the prime motto of National Alliance of People's Movements, and we are also against the caste, class, gender-based inequities. We follow the constitutions in its rights-based framework with its directive principles, and the Panchayati Raj, the three-tier system, we feel really is a symbol of representative democracy, but it will be so if only the first and the primary unit of face-to-face communication, that is the Grama Sabha and the Basti Sabha in the urban areas, remains at the forefront of the development planning processes. So NAPM, as it fights for the equitable and sustainable use of natural resources have always resorted to non-violent peaceful strategies, and NAPM as alliance really sees complementarity of various movements with their own identities, their own mass strengths, and therefore entering into electoral politics for us is to bring these issues to the forefront of the political agenda, which is day in and day out becoming valueless, which is not following the constitution. There is no simplicity in the politics. And we feel that changing the relationship between the state and its people is what is the main objective of our entering into the politics of electoral type from the non-electoral politics or people's politics, which we have been following throughout the last few decades. And we feel that by doing so, we will not be away from movements, but we will strengthen the movements, and we will also strengthen the parliamentary democracy. Having said so, I would say that it is not that we feel that the magic would happen and the immediate great transformation would take place, but we feel what we feel about agriculture to industrialization, what we feel about the various plans and policies in the country, and what is the alternative that we propose will be better put forth before not just the electorate, but all the citizens of our country.
Excellent, Didi. Didi, I think the whole idea of the political spectrum of things, at least for NAPM, started off a decade back. I think in 2004, there are candidates, independent candidates who were fielded, and then a lot of support that was extended. Could you give us a background of what happened in 2004? How was that experiment, Didi?
You see, we planned many times to have a set of independent candidates, but it did not see the light of the day. And on the other hand, there were Gandhians to, Marxist type of ideologues and the activists who always said that the movements must enter politics. It was Siddharaj Dhadda and Thakurdas Bang for that matter, and also the many of our friends in the Communist Party of India and so on. They all felt, and the socialist cadre in the country also felt, that the time had come to go back to the era where the electoral politics was not devoid of people's movements and vice versa. But whenever the movement leaders like Sharad Joshi of the farmers movement, or P.V. Rajgopal of Ekta Parishad, the land rights movement, or the Abdul Jabbar of the Bhopal gas spirit movement, they tried their best. They could not succeed, probably because there was no land created and cultivated by the movements wide enough and deep enough to be able to sow the seeds. And that was therefore necessary. And that was also the time, and today also is the time, when the liquor to money to freebies are distributed by the political mafias. And the mainstream parties really having resorted to those tactics on one hand, and the kind of confusing or deceptive manifestos on the other. They do not leave any space for the right-minded, honest individuals and organizations to fight the battle. So today is the tasting time again, because the Aam Aadmi Party kind of initiative has shown that the land that is now created, unfortunately with the scams and scandals which are exposed, that is the one where the seed can be sown, and that is the new beginning, and the new space created now should be occupied by the movements who work with millions of people who are constitutionally demanding their rights, and justice needs to be accrued to them. So this is again not just an experiment, but an attempt to change, just as we attempt to change the social and economic parameters in India, also the political parameters, and not just the political ideology and policies, but also the political culture, which is going against the equity between the state and the society, as I said, and also equity at various levels.
Excellent. And Didi, I'm getting some questions from listeners on Facebook and other forums. So they're asking a straight question: does Medha Patkar ji plan to contest 2014 Lok Sabha elections? We are eager to get an answer from Medha Tai.
Actually, the process of consultation within the National Alliance of People's Movements, getting every state unit out of 20 state units that we have, right back to the Central Committee as to what do they feel about this. Not only an individual's effort, but the electoral politics and our role in electoral politics. That took a long time. And then there was also a process of involving the urban and the rural people with whom I work, along with a large number of my colleagues, whether in Narmada or in the city of Mumbai and elsewhere in the various districts of Maharashtra and the various states as well. So from Assam to Kerala, we received responses, and in the Mumbai, the Basti-wise resolutions were passed. In Narmada also it was done, and ultimately I think I'm going to conclude this process within a day or two, and most probably I would be saying that I would contest elections, but I cannot say right now as to from which constituency, and not just hiding it or keeping it a secret, but genuinely the process must come to an end by, I'm also calling a meeting of the literatures and all such intellectual supporters of our movements, not as an individual, but as a representative of many movements. So that would come to an end, and then I would give more details to your viewers as well. But let me just come to the conclusion of this process very, very soon, say within next 2 to 3 days.
Excellent. And friends, if you are listening to Medha Tai right now, and if you wish to talk to Medha Tai, please do call on 510-894-6747. That would be 510-894-NRIS. Also, you can express your opinion on Medha Tai contesting, and also you can post any of your questions.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll be wonderful.
That consultation would go a long way.
Yes. So if you would like to express your opinion on Medha Tai contesting, or you have any questions, you can post your messages on Facebook. You can also tweet us on Twitter, and go to nrisamai.com/live. There is a chat window where you can put in your questions as well. So let me bring this. The NAPM has the networks thrust on mass movements. Do you think political inclination and also the entering into the electoral side of things would have any impact?
It will certainly have some impact or other. On one hand, it would widen our agendas. And we have never been issue-based movements anyway. We have had a wider kind of ideology. And as I said, that ideology is based on the constitutional values and rights, but those are also based on the human rights, which are beyond legal rights, as we all believe very strongly and firmly. And any kind of discrimination is not acceptable. And therefore, we want to have not just a so-called secular agenda, but a humane agenda in front of us. And that would help the movement people to really carry forward, not limited to the various issue-based mass basis of the individual movements. And just as NAPM has always been, and the movements have always been, and various other alliances, which are like our sister alliances or brother alliances, those would also look at the politicization of their agenda as the main motto. And our people who have always been voting for this party or other would then culminate their own thinking and acting as citizens and as voters towards the ends that we all would put forth. We would also get the people's response to those, and there would also be a debate. As I've said in Hindi, ours will not be prachar, but it will be prabodhan. We would have to empower people by bringing them to the framework for changing the Indian politics and polity both, changing Indian economics and economy both, and changing the Indian society with its deep roots, its culture, values, diversity, and the natural resource-based communities and the human resource-based communities, and their role would be at the forefront of not just the electoral campaigning, but whatever we would do as movements between the two elections. And if the movement representatives reach the parliament, they would, I'm sure, would certainly play a very important role in shaping the country's life and lifestyle, livelihoods, and the culture as well.
Excellent, Didi. I've got a question right now from one of my friend as well, who's listening. He said that Gujarat has success model and on its plank, the BJP building the national momentum. Medha Patkar ji has been a grassroots activist in Gujarat. So he's asking, does Medha Thai think Modi Sarkar would be any difficult from Rahul Gandhi Sarkar or the Congress Sarkar going forward, if there is any political landscape for BJP going forward? So would Modi Sarkar be any different than the existing governments? If not, why?
See, Gujarat, as any other state in India, has a very complex history, beginning with the Gandhian era, to say the least, but also with the Jivan Das Mehta and others, and Jugatram Dave, who was the great educationist, the pioneering one, even in the Adivasi societies of Gujarat. And I have worked in Gujarat for 4 full years in the northeast belt. And for last 28 years, we have been with the Adivasis of Gujarat, who are near and in the Narmada Valley. And I am associated with the various people's movements in Gujarat, working for the alternative energy, to alternative in the power policy and so on. And I realized that the large percentage of landless in Gujarat, the atrocities on Dalits in Gujarat, the deprivation and destitutionalization of tribals in Gujarat, and also the low standards of education as brought out by the latest survey of education, especially the primary education by Prathama kind of organization in Gujarat, shows that there is no and nothing different in Gujarat than in many other states. And if at all there was good governance through the Gandhian era of social service in Gujarat that kept on turning into a blind path for the rulers, because they started recognizing only the same westernization-based model for Gujarat, which is a state with great agriculture, great cooperatives, the great horticulture, and the rivers, not just Narmada, but Aji and Shatrughna and number of rivers, the Mahi in Gujarat itself. What has happened therefore in Gujarat recently is that as the whole country follows the paradigm, because the rulers impose that on them, the Gujarat is also following the paradigm of handing over the agricultural land to the corporate sector, only the big corporates. No one is against industries. No one is against industrialization. But when Gujarat is trying to now involve 60% of its lands in just one Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor and not caring to consult the agriculturists who form 60 to 70% population in the same region, it is undemocratic and it is unjust. And the farmers to the grazers community has been fighting against this. On the other hand, the Gujarat, which was Gandhi's Gujarat, and Sabarmati Ashram, where I was attacked, but is still a center of peace and symbol of non-violence, we believe is changing towards violence, because again of the fundamentalist way of bringing in the so-called national integrity, as they believe in the monopoly of one religion or other. And it was the riots of 2002 that has created, unfortunately, a different image of Gujarat than the Gandhian peaceful, non-violent image. So it is very clear that even today, the Gujarat Dalits and Adivasis do not feel there is good governance, from the point of view of what is promised to them by the Schedule 5 of the Constitution. That peace and good government is yet to come to Gujarat, and governance and good governance sometimes are deceptive terms unless those are based on equity and justice as the principle. So I don't think that Gujarat is going to follow a different model. Narendra Modi versus Rahul Gandhi is a controversy which I don't want to get into, because the country has a democratic way and should have the democratic way based on the representatives of people as Act 1951, and that's how the Prime Minister should be chosen. And although the party has every right to declare its own candidate, people should judge them not by their speeches or interviews, but by their past history. And so the communal history of Gujarat has not yet come to an end, and it's not of people of Gujarat, but the present ruling class of Gujarat. Hence, I feel that in order to save Gujarat, save Maharashtra, save the country, it is necessary that people vote with full conscience and their own perspective of development, rather than following any typical model presented through the speeches. And those speeches are very, very deceptive. I know that Mr. Modi has been saying in the case of Narmada that the Sardar Sarovar should be completed here and now. Do people come to the valley and see for themselves, and can they do this, to see that lakhs of people are in the submergence area with full life, thickly populated villages, even a township is to go underwater, and the courts have not permitted to do so because rehabilitation and environmental compliance is not there. And do they know that even in this particular dam, lakhs of hectares of the land to be irrigated is now being excluded from the command area, the area to be irrigated from the dam, because the water is to be diverted somewhere else against the original plan, and therefore the project is completely changed by the rulers without the knowledge of people of Kutch and Saurashtra, who are still waiting for water, and the water is available but is not used for them only because of the wrong agendas and wrong priorities. So these are various issues which show to us that both Congress and BJP are following more or less the same economic paradigm and not following the path shown by our own common people of India.
Right. The next important question that I'm getting here, Didi, is what are the important aspects of Aam Aadmi Party that strikes a chord for Medha Thai the most? So they're asking to list out the best things that strikes a chord when you think about Aam Aadmi Party.
I think the Aam Aadmi Party has picked up the various critical issues which over decades movements have brought to the non-electoral political front. And those include, first and the foremost, decentralization of politics and decentralization of economics, decentralization of development planning process. Without that, democratization is impossible. When the smallest unit in the country, even in the constitutional and legal terms, has to be a village community in the rural area and the community of the urban or the semi-urban, rural-urban poor in the metropolis to megalopolis, it is very, very essential that without consulting them, there should be no development plan imposed, whether with the flow of capital coming from within the country or outside. And that is the first and the foremost. Swaraj, it may be called as, but Swadeshi also would be the ideology that would make these communities more and more self-reliant, because that is what the finance commissions of India have told us, and Article 243, 73rd, 74th Constitution of Amendment has also brought that to the forefront. The second agenda is, of course, to fulfill the basic needs as the priority, and that includes water and electricity. And Aam Aadmi Party has said that there has to be, no doubt, almost free distribution of water. They cannot give it free with full-fledged subsidy forever, but certainly if that helps in also limiting the consumption by the elitist sections, then only all would get at least the minimum or optimum amount of water for their consumption at no cost or no profit. And that is the South African type of water policy. As member or commissioner and the World Commission on Dams, we suggested the whole alternative pattern in water management, which starts from the mini and micro watershed and then ends in the distributive justice. So I think that is what they are in a way following. As far as the power is concerned, the huge corruption in the power sector brought in by a handful of big corporates. And we don't deny that we will require the private parties' efforts in water management. May those be communities as private parties, may those be small industries or NGOs. But if the vulgar profit making results in giving very high price to the electricity and making it kind of a very valued kind of energy service, then what is happening today in India is 30 to 60% of the rural households, differing from state to state, are still in the darkness, which is no reason, there is no reason to have this when we have 190,000 megawatt of energy power generation capacity. And there are so many sources of energy. They have yet to go up to the renewable sources of energy. We would like them to go even beyond the audit of the electricity company into the renewable sources of energy as the priority. They have taken a decision on FDI in retail, which was very, very important. We, as even I was working president of the National Hawkers Federation, fought to not only have the hawkers settled, but instead of a haywire gathering of hawkers, we wanted hawking zones as the market for the poor and the middle classes. But we also wanted that their role should be categorically be linked to the employment generation, and the FDI would take away that livelihood source from the millions of hawkers, and that is what is now protected by stopping the FDI in retail, at least for one state, that is Delhi. They have also brought onto their agenda a number of things which they are yet to implement, whether in terms of common education system or in terms of the appropriate values to the labor. We want them to implement the PESA Act and the Forest Rights Act in the Adivasi areas, as they have stated in their manifesto, but their rider vision document is yet to be brought to the fore. Many people are working on that agenda, and we would like them to have an agenda towards equity and justice, as I said. And we also would like them to have the agenda of simplicity of the politics. That also they are trying in their own ways. There are some mistakes committed, etc. But we look at this younger generation as a ray of hope. But they must also be cautioned that they should be not just friendly with, but they should be for gender justice and give the due space and respect to women. They should also be following not just laws, but they should also be following, even for bringing in police reforms, the constitutional ways and means and structures which now they are a part of. So number of things can be said about their efforts, their way of political campaigning, which has been different from the mainstream parties. And you all, Shrikant Bhai, have helped them a lot, I know, and I congratulate you for that.
Thank you, Didi. Yeah, anyone who's really pushing hard for the country and for better politics, clean politics, in whatever best little possible way, I think a lot of NRIs also pitched in and then tried their best and helped out in this endeavor. I think Delhi's political landscape has changed once for all, and it's a matter of...
Shrikant Bhai, I have not referred to corruption, but because that is the first and the foremost and well-known thing amongst all. But
yes,
just as we have dug out number of scams in India, others to Lavasa, to many builder scams, which is pure corruption. And for us, iniquity is also resulting of corruption. The Aam Aadmi Party has put that agenda at the forefront, beginning with Anna Hazare's and all of us involvement in the anti-corruption movement, to the party's agenda for Delhi and the country.
Right, absolutely. Didi, there is one other very valid question that I'm hearing from, sir, I'm an aid volunteer. Aid is Association for India Development. in the US and a very well-known organization. I'm an aid volunteer, and the role of media, social activists have literally connected the grassroots movements to the political decision making and policy making as well. So the role of media, which has been completely commercialized, is becoming significant, and people are getting carried away by the unrealistic portrayal of the media. So the voice of all these social activists who have been playing an important role is unheard of. What's the alternate mechanisms that all these social activists are thinking about in order to promote their realistic work? So I think he has brought up a bigger question here. Media is absolutely taking the direction of the realities into a different tangent. So do you have any thoughts on how you think that this activism, which is really helping the people, reach out to the people, the realities reach out to the people, Didi? Anything on that front?
I think the media, both the mainstream and the alternative one, has a role to play, no doubt about it. But media is a media, it's a medium. The idiom that the movements follow, for it to reach the nook and corner of the country, we, many people in the people's movements, not just the agriculturists, the urban poor, who really are at the core of the movement, not only the activists more or less known to the other parts of the world, but it is certainly they who are not email savvy, who are not much on the social networking, but they have their own way of mobilizing people. They have their own way of propagating their own viewpoints and perspectives. And I think that must continue. Facebook as a faceless communication has a strength and has a limitation too. And the social networking can become asocial if at all it also resorts to the tactical ways of manipulating not just votes but also views. So that kind of Noam Chomsky's, manipulation and maneuvering tactics in the politics at large should not be a part of the movement beyond a limit. Having said so, I must also say that when the mainstream media is controlled by various forces that act against the majority of the Indian population, and so the citizens and the voters, it is also necessary that the alternative ways should be available. So there the social networking is certainly playing a role, along with the various other means, like for example the posters and banners, which have really changed the face of India. I'm joking maybe, but really it is changing the space because the air space is occupying them by them, and that spectrum of political campaigning is really condemning the other spectrum of political campaigning. Just as this 2G and 3G, these posters and banners are hanging all over the country with the portraits and the the cutouts. Mm-hmm. That should be limited, and instead I think a good in-depth debate and dialogue and discourse should be taken forward. Think youngsters who are listening to this, I would appeal to them, think of all this and then use the various media which we also have to use. I don't type the emails myself, but my colleagues do use that technology and help me with that. So internet to the Facebooks, to the Twitter so-called, cannot be adequate mechanisms for an in-depth discussion and debates necessarily, but they can be supplementary and complementary to our kind of, media, which are face-to-face communications, reaching out from door to door. So let this complementarity be understood with its own pros and cons. And the mainstream media we cannot neglect as well. I think we cannot boycott any medium only because it is critical of us. How can that happen? Because sometimes they support us. For Narmada movement, the media supported so much that once a while when they write editorials questioning our data or position, we get a chance to clarify to even the viewers and the readers who are associated with them. So I for myself is for democracy in media. We fall short many times, Shrikant bhai, in writing articles, in expressing our viewpoints, and timely and with due aptness that we must really get over. And if the youngsters help us in doing that, like the speeches and interviews get transcribed and those are circulated or disseminated, I think we would be better understood than the controversies reflected in the news and not the views in the various mainstream media with many of us. Like, for example, a judgment of the Supreme Court, and it may be distortedly reported in a newspaper, and we cannot easily counter. We are careful of respect to the judiciary, so on and so forth. But then we have a chance if someone interviews us on that point, and I can clarify. Same is our views about the agriculture, housing, about the unorganized or unprotected labor force, our views about how the middle class would get the peace and good governance, so on and so forth. We have it already. Let us get a chance to communicate with help of all of you.
Yeah, he is put in a follow-up saying that many of Medha Thai's work and NAPM's work ended up in becoming bigger policies. He has brought about RTI and your work on many other land reforms. So could you throw some light on that, Didi?
Yeah, I think not my individuals, but the movement's work and efforts and the struggles as well as the work in the reconstructive area has certainly shown to the people what is good and what is not, according to our perspectives. But our perspectives are not individual perspectives. Those are the mass perspectives in India. May they be reflected in the debates in the assemblies and parliaments, or most oftenly not. And those perspectives really led to the policy making, because we have been conscious of linking our micro level efforts and work to the macro level perspectives, policies and even laws. So the Right to Information Act, with Aruna Roy, all of us joined the struggle for right to information in Rajasthan, in Maharashtra, with Anna Hazare and others, and we have extensively used that act and has been still using it to expose number of scams and scandals, and also to jail the rationing officers and expose the Adarsha Society scam which NAPM took up. It is very clear that the Forest Rights Act and the Right to Food Act has also resulted out of the movement's efforts. Umpteen number of sit-ins, umpteen number of rallies, umpteen number of dialogues with the government and the various political parties compelled them to bring in something like the public distribution system at more or less universally in India. And so is the change in the hawkers policy. That came in 2003 and 2009, it became an act because of the struggles by the hawkers, which we all, led, participated, drafted, whatever. And we drafted many of these acts, let me tell you, just as the Unorganized Sector Act. The Unorganized Sector Federation, part of NAPM again, just as the Hawkers Federation, we all had umpteen number of protests against the iniquity within the labor sector. And then that act came. We are not fully satisfied with these, but those have shown the, some kind of changeable policies for the 96% of workers in India, mind you, who are not getting pension, provident fund, etc. And the Land Acquisition Act of the British legacy, 94, which was used for forcible acquisition from the farmers to fish workers, we got it changed with the efforts of all the people's movements across the country, and that resulted in the January 2014 onwards, the new act, which have some inadequacies, but which has brought the community participation in development planning at the focus, which says 80% farmers' consent is needed if the land is to be acquired by the state for the private parties, and which brings in rehabilitation as a part of the acquisition process. But we are still not fully satisfied, and still that is certainly a major step forward. We protested before every parliament since last many decades, and then this resulted. So I'm not taking the full credit for, but I think and the Jana Lokpal is a result of the movement. No political parties, even on the opposition benches, tried to bring in these kinds of acts. Rather, many acts are passed within a minute in the parliament, as is the history, and many of the anti-people acts are so passed because the parliamentarians only want their own allowances and favors to themselves to get passed through the acts. And corruption really is there always an agenda. So all these enactments and policies for slums, for example, the Rajiv Awas Yojana, Congress is extensively campaigning for that. But it was our movement in Mumbai from 2004 to 2014. We have been with thousands of slum dwellers participating, saying that slum-free city cannot be at the cost of the people's housing right. So they cannot be just evicted. They should be upgraded and rehabilitated, partly and without giving even a fully free house. There can be a scheme like this, and we presented the schemes, and then came the Rajiv Awas Yojana. They have not implemented it. We are still continuing our struggle for that, but they want to take the credit only with the election at the forefront. So our agenda is much wider, and hence the sectoral changes in the policies, even fish workers policy, has come from the movement. Agricultural policy as an alternate has come from the movement. So some change towards that. Water policy, power policy, we have all our agendas ready, and somewhere we make a dent, we make intervention, we stop the wrong things, we bring in the right things, and we have not been unsuccessful in our efforts, but some entry into electoral politics will give this policy making of ours a boost.
Right, Didi. And I have a last question here. It's coming through when you talked about Anna Hazare ji. I can't substantiate this, but there is a listener who's saying that Medha ji worked very closely with Anna Hazare ji when he led the Right Information Act and Jan Lokpal campaigns. And recently, Medha Tai announced she would discuss with Hazare for his support for AAP and persuade him back to the Aam Aadmi Party. If this is true, Didi, what would be your effort in persuading Anna Hazare ji to support Aam Aadmi Party?
You see, I think Anna is right in remaining outside the party politics. I don't see anything wrong in his decision, and I have also been in a way, but I don't compare myself with him. I only say that it is his right to decide, and he, I think, continues to play a much different role than a party can play, a politician can play, and that also has to be there in every society. Even if some people go into politics, the others must remain in the movements, and those who go into politics emerging out of movement must continue their political efforts in the form of a new movement. So Anna Hazare ji also is playing a complementary role, and if only he can guide the youths who are trying this way, if he supports the right kind of candidates in the country, I think that complementarity will further be strengthened and not, distinguished. I feel that Anna's thoughts are moving towards that end, and I believe he had called one or two meetings towards that end. I'm still a part of the movement's diaspora, so I think it is certainly necessary that we continue with our dialogue with Anna Hazare. Not only myself, but many others do, and they will. And we also continue with the Aam Aadmi Party's people, volunteers, candidates, and we have declared support to them. So this kind of, not mediating, but promoting the complementarity will be our, effort. And I hope that if I also enter into the directly electoral politics, then I would also appeal to both of them to really see it this way and take both paths ahead towards bringing in a very base transformation, not just the superficial changes.
Right. Didi, one last thing. There are questions on how can, if Medha Tai really decides on contesting, how can we all help? Whether it is outside the party, Aam Aadmi Party, or whether it is inside the Aam Aadmi Party, wherever works, how do we support Medha Tai?
I think you support the movement, and by movement I include now with our latest decision a movement to change the face, character and culture of electoral politics. So for me it's not an election, but it is a challenge. Chunav nahi chunauti. It's very necessary, therefore, that reaching out to people itself is the greatest task. They all who know about our views, about movements, would certainly support, but provided they get the right kind of approaching successfully done by our group of volunteers. So we need a huge force of volunteers. And those who would come on the streets with us will be one category. But with very little time at hand, it will be necessary that those on the internets and these kinds of technological means and devices can also help us reach out. I'm not at all techno-savvy for that matter. So it will all be left to you, my young friends. And please do it effectively, because there will be challenges of different kinds. There can be false kind of counters to everything that we would say. There will be false and fictitious kind of allegations against us. And we have a very clear past and we have a clear view of the future, but that needs to be taken to the every doorstep, not only in the small little constituency, but the constituency of the whole of India's parliamentary democracy. We also would like you to really give reflection into the various what would I call it, messages that would be initiated from your side. And certainly we need funds for the elections, but we would be limiting ourselves to the maximum extent possible to the minimum of expenditure pattern. But we need in-kind help also, and we need support of that kind within the legal parameters. I would also therefore say that come if you can to the streets where we would be contesting, and not just myself, but many movement candidates are all without the financial and without even much of the technological resources. Give all of them a support. I can give you a list of such good candidates all over India who must be in the parliament to really raise a right kind of voice of truth. And that's what would be the contest. And if you can also create the media, may those be posters, may those be films, documentaries, and also help us communicate with the electorates there in India. And I would say that don't limit yourselves to elections, be a part of the movements. We want you in the reconstructive work, just as there are engineers, doctors who go beyond borders. Be beyond borders. We want internationalism, if not the only one kind of monopoly globalization. So please be a part of the movements too and support in our reconstructive work. We have Jeevan Shalas in the Narmada Valley, the schools of life. You can see the documentary on the YouTube. There are a number of constructive efforts of the alternative power projects, for example, where we fall short, and unless someone supports us, even in kind or in service, we cannot go ahead with these kinds of exercises. So both in struggle and reconstruction, we need your support.
Uh, I think there's Didi, can you hear me, please? Hello? And friends, if you're listening to this show right now, I think Medha explained in depth and what her ideas or her thoughts are, and what's the plan of action going forward, whether it is movements or whether it is politics. I hope you had a wonderful time listening to Medha. She actually explaining the intricacies, the difficulties, the problems in all these movements, and also moving forward on the electoral front. So I hope each one of you could help in whatever best possible way in the interest of the country. If you find this show interesting, and if you have any questions, any comments, anything of that nature, please do post it on nrisamai.com/live chat, and also you can write to us at nrisamai@gmail.com. Please like us at Facebook, NRI Samai, and also Twitter, NRI Samai. I hope you all had a wonderful time today listening to this conversation. Please do come back every Saturday and Sunday, same time, 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can also listen to NRI Samai, all the shows that are archived on NRI Samai at youtube.com/NRI Samai. Thank you very much, friends, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Friends, if you liked today's show, please go to youtube.com/NRI Samay and click on the subscribe button. You will get notified every time we publish a new show. And you can also like us on our social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and Google+.